He didn't act like a wild bobcat. He's got the swagger of a wildcat, but the heart of a house cat. And a sock collection that would make any laundry basket cry. Meet Maverick, the bobcat who believes every cardboard box is a fortress, every sock is sacred treasure, and every visitor is a friend waiting to be purred at. This magnificent wildcat, with his distinctive ear tufts and golden eyes, demonstrates perfect hunting skills one moment, then chirps for cuddles the next. This is the story of nature's most adorable contradiction. A fierce predator who just wants to snuggle with your socks. Before we start, hit the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. The call came through at 5:47 a.m. on a February morning that had painted Vermont's hills white with fresh snow. Caroline Matthews had been a licensed wildlife rehabilitator for 12 years, but the tremor in the farmer's voice on the other end still made her sit up straighter in bed. "There's something wrong," the elderly man said, his words coming fast and worried. "Found a baby bobcat by my barn, just lying there in the snow. Mother's been dead on Route 89 since yesterday. State trooper confirmed it. This little one won't make it without help." Caroline was already pulling on her boots as she took down the address. The drive to the farm took 40 minutes through roads that hadn't seen a plow yet, her truck cutting fresh tracks through the pristine white. She'd handled dozens of orphaned wildlife over the years. Raccoons, foxes, even a black bear cub once. But bobcat kittens were particularly vulnerable. Without their mother's milk and warmth, survival rates plummeted with each passing hour. The farmer, Mr. Hutchinson, was waiting by his barn, a bundle of old towels cradled in his weathered arms like precious cargo. When Caroline peered inside, her heart clenched. The kitten couldn't have been more than 3 weeks old, his eyes barely open, spotted fur matted with snow. He was no bigger than a loaf of bread, and when she gently lifted him, his body felt too cold, too still. But then, a tiny mule, weak but unmistakably alive. "Temperatures dropping to 10 below tonight," Mr. Hutchinson said quietly. "Would have been dead by morning." Caroline nodded, already assessing. Severe hypothermia, probable dehydration, and without mother's milk for at least 24 hours. The odds weren't good, but she'd beaten worse odds before. She tucked the bundle inside her jacket for the drive home, feeling the faint rise and fall of tiny breaths against her chest. Her rehabilitation facility, a converted barn behind her house equipped with heating units, incubators, and medical supplies, had seen many critical cases. But something about this kitten struck her differently. Maybe it was the way he'd tried to lift his head when she'd first touched him, or how his tiny paw had curled around her finger with surprising strength. Whatever it was, Caroline found herself whispering promises to him during the drive. "Stay with me, little one. Just stay with me." The first 72 hours were critical. Caroline set up round-the-clock care in her kitchen, easier to monitor than the barn. The incubator maintained a steady 90 degrees. IV fluids corrected the dehydration, and specialized formula replaced mother's milk. Every 2 hours, day and night, she fed him with a bottle designed for premature kittens. He was so small that the standard wildlife bottles were too large. On the 4th day, his eyes fully opened, stunning gold with black pupils that seemed to take in everything. That's when Caroline noticed something unusual. Most orphaned bobcats she'd worked with remained skittish, wild even in their vulnerability. But this one? When she approached with the bottle, he'd purr, a deep, rumbling sound that seemed impossible from such a tiny body. He'd knead his paws against the towel like a house cat, and after feeding, he'd cry until she held him. "You're supposed to be fierce," she told him one night at 3 a.m., his belly full and round, paws batting at her hair. "Your kind hunts snowshoe hares and climbs trees. You're not supposed to be this silly." By week 3, the kitten, whom Caroline had started calling Maverick in her notes, though she tried not to get attached, had graduated from the incubator to a large dog crate in her living room. This transition marked the beginning of what Caroline would later describe as the chaos era. It started innocently enough. Maverick discovered socks. Caroline had been folding laundry when a white athletic sock fell to the floor. Before she could retrieve it, Maverick had pounced, grabbed it in his tiny jaws, and proceeded to parade around the crate like he'd caught legitimate prey. The sock was nearly as big as he was, causing him to trip over it every few steps, but his determination never wavered. He'd growl if she tried to take it, then immediately purr when she backed off, settling down to sleep with the sock clutched protectively against his chest. "Of all the things to imprint on," Caroline muttered, but she couldn't help smiling. The sock obsession escalated. As Maverick grew stronger and earned supervised time outside the crate, he became a sock thief of legendary proportions. Clean socks from the laundry basket, dirty socks from the hamper, even socks straight off Caroline's feet if she wasn't careful. He'd collect them, creating a nest in the corner of the living room behind the couch. By the time he was 8 weeks old, Caroline had to buy new socks weekly because half her collection had disappeared into Maverick's hoard. Then came the boxes. The first incident happened when Caroline received a delivery of medical supplies. She'd left the cardboard box by the door, intending to break it down for recycling. Within minutes, Maverick had claimed it. He'd somehow maneuvered his increasingly substantial body inside, peering out with an expression of pure satisfaction. When Caroline tried to remove him, the box contained residual shipping materials that could be harmful. He'd gripped the edges with his claws and yowled in protest. "Fine," she conceded, carefully removing any packing materials. But just this once. It was not just once. Every delivery became an event. Maverick would hear the delivery truck from rooms away, racing to the door with excitement that rivaled any dog's. Small boxes, large boxes, oddly shaped boxes. He tried to fit into all of them. As he grew from kitten to juvenile, weighing 15, then 20 pounds, the sight became increasingly comical. Caroline had videos on her phone of Maverick, now sporting impressive ear tufts and massive paws, trying to squeeze into a shoebox meant for human feet half his size. The rehabilitation process wasn't all play, though. Caroline worked diligently on maintaining Maverick's wild instincts. She wore thick gloves during play sessions to discourage him from seeing human hands as toys. She introduced live prey training with mice and rats, humanely sourced from a supplier who provided feeders for rehabilitation centers. She built climbing structures in the barn and taught him to hunt through puzzle feeders that mimicked the challenge of catching real prey. But Maverick seemed to exist in two worlds. During training sessions, he was all Bobcat, stalking with lethal precision, pouncing with power that reminded Caroline why these animals were apex predators in their weight class. His canine teeth had grown impressive, his muscles rippled under his spotted coat, and his reflexes were lightning fast. Yet the moment training ended, he'd transform. He'd follow Caroline around the house like a devoted dog, chirping and trilling for attention. He'd bring her gifts, usually socks, sometimes toy mice from his training sessions. Once, memorably, an entire roll of toilet paper he'd unraveled throughout the house. He'd purr so loudly during their evening routine that Caroline could hear him from the next room. The challenge came as Maverick approached 6 months old. Standard protocol dictated that Bobcats should be released back to the wild between 6 and 8 months. Once they'd demonstrated adequate hunting skills and appropriate wariness of humans. But Maverick presented a unique problem. His hunting skills were excellent. He could catch live prey with ease, climb trees, and had even successfully hunted a rabbit Caroline had released in the large outdoor enclosure. But his attachment to humans, specifically to Caroline, remained strong. "He's not a pet," Dr. Sarah Winters, the veterinarian who worked with the Rehabilitation Center, reminded Caroline during Maverick's 6-month checkup. "You know that, right? No matter how sweet he seems, he's a wild animal." Caroline nodded, though her heart wasn't in it. She knew Dr. Winters was right. She'd seen what happened when wild animals became too habituated to humans. It usually ended tragically for the animal. But Maverick was different. Wasn't he? The decision was taken out of her hands 2 weeks later. Caroline had been preparing Maverick's evening meal when she heard the crash. Racing to the living room, she found Maverick on top of the bookshelf, impressive considering it was 7 feet tall, with several books scattered on the floor. But it wasn't the mess that concerned her. It was Maverick himself. He was pressed against the wall, ears flat, making a low growl she'd never heard before. Then she saw it. A massive tomcat outside the window, easily the largest feral cat she'd ever seen. The tom was sitting on the porch rail, staring at Maverick with the casual arrogance of an animal that had never lost a fight. Maverick, 25 pounds of muscle and wild instinct, was trembling. "Oh, sweetheart," Caroline breathed, understanding flooding through her. Maverick had been taken from his mother too young. He'd never learned proper Bobcat social skills, never understood his place in the hierarchy of predators. He saw himself not as a fierce wildcat, but as something smaller, more vulnerable. The sock-carrying, box-sitting, purring creature he'd become wasn't an act. It was who he truly was. That night, Caroline made calls. She spoke with rehabilitation centers across the country, looking for situations where a human-imprinted bobcat could live safely. The options were limited and heartbreaking. Euthanasia at worst, life in a small zoo exhibit at best. Neither felt right for Maverick, who'd sprawled across her couch as she made the calls, a sock dangling from his mouth, purring like a diesel engine. The solution came from an unexpected source. Mr. Hutchinson, the farmer who'd found Maverick, called 2 days later. "Been thinking about that bobcat," he said without preamble. "My granddaughter's studying to be a veterinarian up at Cornell. She mentioned something about wildlife ambassador programs, animals that can't be released but help educate folks about conservation. That's something you've considered?" Caroline had, but ambassador animals required special permits, dedicated facilities, and significant funding. It wasn't something a single rehabilitator could typically manage. But Mr. Hutchinson wasn't finished. "My farm's been in the family 4 generations," he continued. "Got more land than I need these days. What if we worked something out? Build proper facilities on my property, you manage the program, we split the educational visits? My granddaughter says schools pay good money for wildlife presentations. Could help fund the whole operation, maybe even expand to help more animals." The idea had merit, but it would take months of planning, permits, and construction. In the meantime, Maverick continued his dual existence. Fierce predator during training, oversized house cat the rest of the time. The sock collection grew to legendary proportions. Caroline had to dedicate an entire drawer to Maverick's kills, socks of every color and size he'd proudly presented to her. The box situation had evolved, too. Caroline had given up fighting it and started ordering supplies in bulk just for the boxes. She'd break them down to various sizes, creating a rotating selection of dens for Maverick. Watching him try to stuff himself into increasingly smaller boxes became evening entertainment. He'd contort his body in ways that seemed to defy physics, always managing to fit at least 3/4 of himself inside, tail and back legs comically protruding. Autumn arrived with spectacular color in Vermont's mountains. The permits had been approved, the facilities on Mr. Hutchinson's farm nearly complete. A large enclosed habitat with trees, hiding spots, and a climate-controlled shelter, plus an education center where Maverick could safely interact with the public from behind specially designed barriers. But as moving day approached, Caroline found herself struggling. Every night, Maverick would curl up beside her on the couch, his massive head on her lap, purring while she stroked his ears. He'd still bring her socks, dropping them at her feet with obvious pride. During their last week together in the house, he seemed to sense the change coming. He became clingy, following her from room to room, crying if she closed a door between them. "You're going to be okay," she told him the night before the move, his body taking up half the couch, a collection of socks scattered around them like offerings. "You'll still see me every day. You'll have more space to run, climb, play, and you'll help teach people about bobcats, show them how special your kind really is." Maverick responded by purring louder and batting at her hair with one massive paw, claws carefully sheathed, something he'd learned months ago when Caroline had yelped after an accidentally rough play session. The transition to the ambassador program exceeded everyone's expectations. Maverick thrived in his new habitat, which was 10 times larger than anything Caroline could have provided. He had platforms at various heights, a pool for hot days, another un-Bobcat-like trait, he loved water, and multiple dens, including, yes, a selection of cardboard boxes that Caroline refreshed weekly. The educational programs began slowly, just local schools at first. Caroline would talk about bobcat biology, conservation, and habitat protection, while Maverick demonstrated his climbing skills, hunting techniques, with toy prey, and, to everyone's delight, his sock obsession. She'd incorporated it into the presentation, explaining how young animals form attachments and how early experiences shape behavior, even in wild animals. The moment that convinced Caroline everything would be okay came during a visit from a group of elderly residents from a nearby assisted living facility. One woman, Mrs. Eleanor Price, had been wheelchair-bound and largely non-responsive according to her caregivers. But when Maverick padded past her section of the viewing area, carrying his favorite purple sock, something sparked in her eyes. "I had a cat," she said suddenly, her voice creaky from disuse. "During the Depression, he'd carry my father's socks around just like that. Daddy would pretend to be mad, but he'd buy extra socks just for Whiskers." Her caregivers were amazed. It was the most she'd spoken in months. Caroline brought Maverick closer to the barrier, and he, perhaps sensing something, sat down and began purring, the sound carrying across the space. Mrs. Price smiled, a transformation that had her caregivers wiping away tears. That became Maverick's true gift. Yes, he educated thousands about wildlife conservation and bobcat behavior. His story helped raise funds for the Rehabilitation Center, allowing Caroline to save dozens more animals. But his greatest impact was in those moments of connection. The child afraid of animals who laughed at his box antics. The veteran with PTSD who found peace in his purring. The teenager struggling with feeling different who related to a wild animal that didn't quite fit the mold. 3 years after that cold February morning, Maverick had become something of a local celebrity. His Instagram account at Sock Thief Maverick had over 100,000 followers. The Rehabilitation Center had expanded to include 3 full-time staff members and had successfully released 47 rehabilitated animals back to the wild. Mr. Hutchinson's granddaughter, now Dr. Rebecca Hutchinson, had joined as the center's veterinarian. But for Caroline, the most precious moments remained the quiet ones. Each evening, after the visitors left and the educational programs ended, she'd sit with Maverick in his habitat. He'd still bring her socks. She kept a supply in a bucket by the entrance. He'd still try to fit into boxes too small for his magnificent frame. And he'd still purr, that impossible rumbling sound that had no business coming from a fierce predator. One evening, as the first snow of winter began to fall, reminiscent of that morning 3 years ago, Caroline watched Maverick playing with a cardboard box, trying to ambush it as if it were prey. He pounced, missed comically, and ended up tumbling head over paws, the box landing on top of him. He emerged with his ear tufts askew and an expression of wounded dignity that lasted exactly 3 seconds before he attacked the box again. "You know," Dr. Rebecca said, joining Caroline at the viewing area, "I've studied animal behavior for years, and I still can't explain him. By all rights, he shouldn't be this happy. Animals raised without their mothers, especially predators, usually develop serious behavioral issues." Caroline smiled, watching Maverick finally defeat the box and proceed to try cramming himself inside it. Maybe that's the lesson. Sometimes the unexpected path is the right one. He wasn't meant to be a typical bobcat, and that's okay. He's teaching people that wild animals are individuals, with personalities and quirks and the capacity to surprise us. And an apparently infinite capacity for sock theft, Rebecca added as Maverick emerged from his box, a black sock in his mouth that Caroline was pretty sure had been in her laundry basket that morning. As if sensing their attention, Maverick looked their way and did his greeting ritual, a chirping trill followed by an elaborate stretch that showed off every one of his 25 pounds of muscle. Then he padded over to the viewing area, sock still dangling from his mouth, and settled down against the barrier closest to Caroline. His purr rumbled through the evening air, a sound of complete contentment. The bobcat, who'd arrived as a dying kitten, no bigger than a loaf of bread, had grown into something unprecedented. Neither fully wild nor truly tame, but something uniquely himself. He was living proof that conservation came in many forms, that education could happen through joy and laughter as much as facts and figures, and that sometimes the silliest, most unexpected connections were the ones that saved lives, both animal and human. As the snow continued to fall, Caroline reached through the specially designed interaction slot to stroke Maverick's ear. He leaned into the touch, purring louder, the sock dropping forgotten as he dozed off. In the education center, the day's collection of visitor drawings covered the bulletin board, dozens of pictures of a spotted cat with boxes and socks, drawn by children who would grow up understanding that wildlife deserved protection, respect, and sometimes a little bit of silliness. The journey from trembling orphan to confident ambassador had been paved with chaos, comedy, and comfort, just as Caroline had documented in her journals. But it had also been paved with love, understanding, and the recognition that sometimes the animals that don't fit the mold are the ones that teach us the most about acceptance, adaptation, and the beautiful unpredictability of life. Maverick might not have been the bobcat nature intended him to be, but he'd become the bobcat the world needed him to be. A bridge between wild and domestic, fierce and gentle, expected and surprising. And as Caroline headed home that night, she couldn't help but smile at the purple sock tucked into her pocket. A gift from a wild predator who taught her that sometimes the best conservation stories were the ones that made people laugh, cry, and believe in second chances.